Ancient Roman hotels offered beds crawling with pests and wine often cut with dangerous additives. We are pulling back the curtain on the gritty reality of a night in a Roman inn, revealing every surprising service and hidden danger a traveler would have faced. By the end of this journey, you will know exactly what it took to survive a night on the Roman road. You will discover why a simple bed was a luxury and how an innkeeper could be your greatest ally or your worst enemy. What would you risk for a warm meal and a place to sleep? 2,000 years ago, the choice of inn defined your entire journey in ancient Rome. At the bottom of this social ladder was the Capona, a simple tavern that offered a few basic rooms above the noisy common area. Here, the air was thick with the smell of cheap wine and roasted chickpeas, and the promise of a bed often meant sharing a cramped space with other travelers, your belongings clutched tightly to your chest. A step up, both in price and expectation, was the Taberna Diversoria. This was a dedicated inn, a place built specifically for lodging travelers. You might find a more secure room, perhaps even a small stable for your mule, and a menu that went beyond the most basic staples of the Capona. But for the average Roman merchant or pilgrim, these commercial establishments were the entire world of travel. Then there were the mansions, an entirely different class of accommodation. These were not inns for the public, but official state runway stations spaced a day's journey apart along the major Roman roads. Reserved for government officials, imperial couriers, and soldiers on official duty, a mansio provided secure lodging, fresh horses, and even maintenance for vehicles, all funded by the state. A weary merchant could only watch as a government messenger bypassed the common Capona and headed straight for the fortified gates of the mansio, a stark reminder that on the Roman road, your status determined not just your comfort, but your very safety. So how did you secure a spot in one of these places? And what was the very first thing you had to do upon arrival? The process was far from simple. Your first concern, after a long day on the road, was the safety of your transport. A merchant's cart loaded with goods or a soldier's horse represented his entire livelihood, his very means of moving forward. Roman innkeepers knew this, and the entire layout of a proper taberna diversoria was built around this fundamental need. The heart of the establishment was not the dining room, but the central courtyard. This enclosed, secure space functioned as the ancient equivalent of a parking garage and stable combined. Picture a dusty, open area surrounded by the inn's buildings on all sides. A single heavy gate, the only way in or out. This is where you would guide your cart, your mule, or your horse. The stables themselves were typically simple, open-fronted stalls lining the inner walls of this courtyard, little more than rough stone mangers for feed and iron rings to tie your animal. The care provided was basic but vital. For an extra fee, an innkeeper's servant might offer your tired horse a bucket of water and a bundle of hay, but the responsibility for grooming and checking its hooves still fell to you. That secure courtyard was your first and last line of defense. Once that main gate was bolted shut for the night, your most valuable possessions, your means of escape, and your source of income were locked inside with you. But securing your transport was just the beginning. The real challenge was securing your own safety inside the inn itself. Once your animal was secured, your own need for rest became undeniable. The Roman inn offered a bed, but this was a promise that required careful interpretation. Forget the private room, a concept almost unheard of for the average traveler. What awaited you was typically a cella, a small, barren chamber that opened directly onto the noisy central courtyard. Inside, you would find the standard Roman bed, a simple wooden frame with webbing of leather straps stretched tight across it. Upon this frame lay a mattress, which was little more than a large cloth sack stuffed with straw or dried reeds. It was a hard, unforgiving surface that offered scant cushioning from the solid wood beneath. The true luxury of a wealthy Roman's villa, a soft mattress filled with wool or feathers, was a world away from the scratchy, lumpy bedding of the inn. And in this simple sack of straw lay another, more unpleasant reality. These mattresses were rarely, if ever, cleaned. They were a paradise for bedbugs, fleas, and lice. A night's sleep was often a battle against tiny, biting adversaries. The constant itching and crawling, a universal experience for anyone who could not afford to travel with their own bedding and linens. To save space, these cella were often arranged dormitory style, with several beds crammed into a single room. You would be sleeping mere feet away from strangers, each of you listening to the snores, coughs, and movements of the others. There was no real privacy, only a shared exhaustion that made the rough bed and its itchy inhabitants a risk worth taking. So with your body desperate for rest, you had to make a choice. Could you trust the strangers sharing your room? Or did you need to take even more drastic measures to protect yourself until morning? The room's sparse furnishings did little to ease a traveler's mind. Beyond the straw-filled bed, you might find a single, wobbly wooden table and a ceramic chamber pot tucked into a corner. That was the entirety of your private space. There were no closets for your belongings, no locks on the door, and certainly no private washing facilities. This profound lack of security shaped every action a weary guest would take. It was standard practice to sleep fully clothed, your money belt still secured and your most valuable possessions, perhaps a small purse of coins or important documents, clutched tightly against your body or used as a hard pillow. The constant, low-grade fear of theft was a silent roommate for everyone. The strangers snoring in the beds beside you were an unknown quantity. Could you trust the merchant from the next province or the soldier on leave? More unsettling was the potential threat from the innkeeper and his staff. They had access to every room and knew exactly who carried valuable goods. A dishonest innkeeper could easily slip into a cella while its occupant slept, or an opportunistic servant could claim a dropped coin purse was merely found. This environment of mutual suspicion meant that true rest was a rare commodity. Your body might be lying down, but your mind remained on watch, listening for every creak of the floorboard and every rustle in the dark. And if you managed to guard your possessions through the long night, a new challenge awaited with the sunrise. The simple act of finding a meal in a Roman inn was its own intricate dance of risk and reward. After a cold night clutching your belongings in a barren cella, the promise of warmth drew every guest toward the common room. The heart of the inn's social life was not a place for quiet reflection, but a smoky, bustling hub centered around a single, vital source of heat. This was typically a large, open hearth or a substantial bronze brazier filled with glowing charcoal. For travelers chilled to the bone from a day on the road, this was the only place to truly thaw out. You would join the huddle of other guests, all extending their hands toward the flames, the heat slowly seeping back into stiff fingers and aching joints. The atmosphere was thick with the scent of wood smoke, roasted meats, and the damp wool of drying cloaks. This was where stories were exchanged, rumors from distant provinces were shared, and temporary alliances were formed over a shared cup of wine. It was also a place of practicality. If an innkeeper was particularly generous, a traveler might be permitted to warm a small pot of stew or a piece of bread over the coals, transforming a basic meal into something that felt genuinely nourishing. Yet this comfort came with a constant underlying danger. Roman inns were largely built from timber, with wooden support beams and dry, thatched roofs. A single stray spark jumping from the hearth onto the rushes covering the floor could spell disaster. The very structure that offered shelter was also a tinderbox, and everyone gathered around that welcoming fire knew it was a calculated risk. They traded the penetrating cold of the road for the immediate smoky warmth of a room that could, at any moment, become a trap. As darkness fell completely, the inn's common room became an island of light in a sea of night. The primary source of this illumination was the simple oil lamp, a small ceramic dish filled with olive oil and fitted with a floating wick. For a traveler, this flickering flame was not a given, but another service added to your bill. The quality of light it produced was soft, golden, and constantly in motion, casting long, dancing shadows across the faces of the other guests and the rough-hewn walls. It was a light that revealed just enough to navigate by, but left the corners of the room pooled in deep, mysterious darkness. The air carried the distinct, slightly sweet and smoky scent of burning olive oil, a smell that permeated your hair and clothing after just a short while. This dim, expensive light dictated all evening activity. Reading or writing a letter required you to huddle close to a lamp, squinting at the shaky script. Any complex task, like mending a torn tunic or checking a map, became a frustrating challenge. Most social life and business discussions were therefore forced to cluster in the common area where a few lamps were lit, concentrating the inn's entire nighttime population into one smoky, murmuring pool of humanity. Beyond that circle of warmth and light, the rest of the building was swallowed by an almost total blackness, making a trip to the latrine a cautious, hands-outstretched journey into the unknown. And if you managed to secure a lamp to take to your cella, its feeble glow did little to dispel the profound darkness, or the unease that came with it. The flickering lamplight did more than just push back the darkness. It illuminated the one service that could make or break an inn's reputation. With no way to carry a full kitchen, every traveler was utterly dependent on the Capona for their next meal. This establishment was, first and foremost, a tavern, and its menu was a study in practical, durable sustenance. The centerpiece was almost always a large, simmering pot of stew. One of the most common was pulse, a simple but filling porridge made from spelt or emmer wheat, boiled for hours until it reached a thick, gruel-like consistency. Into this base, an innkeeper might add whatever was cheap and available, a handful of lentils, some chopped leeks, or a bit of salted pork or fish for flavor. This was not gourmet dining, it was calorie-rich fuel designed to fill an empty stomach and provide energy for another long day on the road. Alongside your bowl of pulse, you would receive a hunk of coarse, dark bread, a small block of hard, salty cheese, and a few olives preserved in brine. For those with a few extra coins, there might be slices of preserved meat, like cured sausage or smoked mutton, foods that could survive for weeks without spoiling. The quality varied wildly, of course. An honest innkeeper might serve a hearty, flavorful stew, while a less scrupulous one would offer a thin, watery gruel, using the cheapest ingredients possible to maximize his profit. The cost for such a meal was relatively low, perhaps a few small bronze coins, but it was an unavoidable expense. Every traveler had to weigh the price against the gnawing hunger in their belly, and the risk of eating food that had been prepared in conditions far from clean. And then there was the drink, a necessity that carried its own unique set of dangers. That shared meal in the smoky common room was almost always washed down with wine. The Roman inn was as much a bar as it was a hotel, and the wine it served was the lifeblood of the establishment. But the wine you were poured was nothing like what we know today. For a Roman traveler, the idea of drinking wine straight was considered the mark of a barbarian or a drunkard. The wine from the innkeeper's amphora was powerfully strong and often harshly acidic, so it was always mixed with water. The ratio was a matter of custom and caution, typically 2 or 3 parts water to 1 part wine. This was not just about tempering the flavor, it was about making the drink safer. Water from a public fountain or a country well could be risky, but mixing it with acidic wine was believed to purify it, killing any harmful spirits or bad humors within. So when you raised your clay cup, you were participating in a ritual of both sociability and survival. The quality of this diluted wine, however, was entirely in the hands of the innkeeper, and this is where the real danger lay. A dishonest keeper had many ways to stretch his valuable supply. He might add seawater for a salty tang, or mix in herbs and spices to mask the taste of wine that was turning to vinegar. The most feared practice was the addition of dangerous substances like lead acetate, which was known to sweeten a sour wine. A traveler might enjoy the unexpectedly sweet flavor, unaware that he was slowly being poisoned with every sip. The fear of this adulteration was so widespread that Roman law specifically forbade it. An innkeeper caught selling doctored wine could face severe fines or even be sentenced to hard labor. Yet in the dim light of a remote roadside tavern, far from the eyes of any magistrate, the law offered little comfort. You had to trust the man pouring your drink, a man whose face you might never see again. So you took your first cautious sip, trying to discern the truth in the watered-down wine, a simple act of thirst that could conceal a calculated betrayal. The water you drank in a Roman inn was a gamble with your health. For those who could not afford the watered-down wine, or who simply preferred to avoid its risks, the innkeeper provided the most basic necessity of all. The source of this water defined its safety. In a city, a well-run inn might have a direct pipe from a nearby aqueduct, bringing a relatively clean, steady flow. But out on the remote highways, the standard source was a well dug right there in the central courtyard. You would see servants hauling up buckets from the deep, stone-lined shaft, the water cool but far from pure. Everyone knew the danger. A well was vulnerable to contamination from the stable drainage just a few paces away, or from a latrine pit dug too close. The invisible threats in a single cup could bring on a crippling stomach illness or worse. This is why so many ordinary Romans, from soldiers to laborers, relied on a different, safer beverage altogether, a sharp, acidic drink called pasca. This was simply cheap, low-quality wine that had fully turned to vinegar, mixed with water, and sometimes flavored with herbs. Its intense acidity made it hostile to the bacteria that plagued ordinary water supplies. A sip of pasca was bracing and sour, but it was far less likely to leave you desperately ill by the roadside the next morning. So the choice at the end of a long day was a stark one: risk the well water, trust the innkeeper's wine, or settle for the reliable, if unpleasant, safety of vinegar water. Each option was a calculation of risk against coin, a daily negotiation for your own well-being. And once your thirst was settled, another, more mundane negotiation began, one that involved the simple, universal need for cleanliness. The simple act of sending a message from a roadside inn connected you directly to the empire's beating heart. For merchants and officials, the journey did not stop when they handed their mule to a stable boy. their business continued by the flickering light of a rented lamp. A more established taberna diversoria catered to this need, offering a vital service for a price, the rental of writing materials. An innkeeper might provide a set of wax tablets, 2 or 3 small wooden frames filled with a smooth layer of black beeswax. Paired with these was a stylus, a metal or bone implement sharpened to a point at one end and flattened at the other. With this simple kit, a traveling merchant could carefully update his accounts, scratching his calculations into the wax surface. A government courier, his official message already delivered from his leather pouch, could compose a personal letter home, the stylus making a soft, scraping whisper in the quiet of the common room. The flattened end of the tool was just as important, used to smooth over the wax and erase a mistake, allowing the tablet to be used again and again. This was not a gift from the innkeeper, of course. It was another line on your bill, a small but necessary expense for staying connected to the world of commerce and administration. After finishing his notes, a traveler would then face the challenge of sending them. He would have to trust a servant to carry the sealed tablets to the next town with a reliable messenger service, or hope to find another traveler heading in the right direction, a stranger willing to act as a courier for a few coins. In that moment, the humble inn became a tiny, temporary node in the vast Roman network of information, its rough wooden tables serving as desks for the endless work of running an empire. Beyond the warmth of the fire and the taste of the wine, the true currency of a Roman inn was information. The common room buzzed with a constant, low hum of conversation, a living network where stories and secrets were traded as freely as coins. A merchant from Gaul might share the latest news about unrest on the frontier, while a sailor from Ostia would tell of a ship delayed by storms, sending the price of Egyptian grain soaring. A farmer traveling to market could reveal which local villages had surplus crops to sell. In an empire without newspapers or instant communication, this was how news traveled, carried on the tongues of weary men from one smoky tavern to the next. The innkeeper stood at the center of this whirlpool of gossip. He was the moderator and the local expert, a man who saw hundreds of faces pass through his doors every month. His knowledge was a service as valuable as a clean bed. For a traveler about to head into the mountains, the innkeeper's warning about a rockfall blocking the pass or recent bandit activity could mean the difference between a safe journey and a disastrous one. He knew which local guides were trustworthy and which ferrymen charged a fair price. He could advise on the weather patterns for the coming day, suggesting an early start to avoid the afternoon rains. This exchange was a delicate dance. A traveler had to decide how much to reveal about his own business and how much to trust the information he received. Was the merchant exaggerating the price of silk to drive up his own profits? Was the innkeeper downplaying the bandit threat because he was in league with them? Every piece of information was a potential tool or a hidden trap. And in the flickering lamplight, every traveler became both a broadcaster and a cautious receiver in the ancient world's most vital social network. Even the simplest board game could transform a room full of suspicious strangers into a circle of friendly competitors. After the meal was finished and the wine cups were drained, the long Roman night was often filled with the soft clatter of game pieces. The most common form of entertainment an inn could offer was a board scratched directly into the surface of a stone table or a worn piece of wood. For the price of a drink, the innkeeper would provide a small bag of playing pieces, and the evening's contest could begin. One of the most popular games was Ludus Latrunculorum, which translates to the game of soldiers or mercenaries, This was a game of military strategy, a distant ancestor of chess. Two players would face each other with an array of colored stones or glass pieces, each attempting to trap their opponent's soldiers by surrounding them on two sides. The goal was capture and tactical supremacy, a peaceful reflection of the martial world outside the inn's walls. The other universal favorite was Tourney Lapilli, a game you would instantly recognize as an ancient version of tic-tac-toe. Its grid was scratched everywhere in the Roman world, from the steps of public buildings to the tables of common taverns. With just a few quick lines and a handful of pebbles or broken pottery shards, two travelers could be locked in a quick battle of wits. These games were more than just a way to pass the time. They were a social lubricant in a world built on suspicion. Sitting across a game board from a stranger forced a kind of interaction. You had to speak to challenge a move, to laugh at a clever trap, or groan at a simple mistake. A shared game could forge a temporary bond, turning a potential threat into a companion for a single evening. In the flickering lamplight, the quiet concentration over a game of soldiers was a small island of normalcy, a reminder of home and friendly competition in the middle of a long, uncertain journey. The clatter of game pieces was often just the beginning of the evening's entertainment. As the night deepened, the common room transformed into a stage for more spontaneous forms of amusement. A traveler from the east, warmed by the cheap wine, might begin a long, winding story about encountering strange beasts in the deserts of Syria. His tale would be met with skeptical laughs or intrigued questions from the other guests, each detail adding to the collective mythology of the road. In another corner, a local farmer with a simple flute might start to play, the reedy melody cutting through the smoky air and providing a fleeting sense of tranquility, a brief reminder of home for men who were far from their own hearts. Yet this lively atmosphere always carried an edge of risk, especially when the dice came out. Gambling, or Aliyah, was a constant and controversial presence. You would see men huddled on benches, their faces tense in the lamplight as they shook a leather cup and spilled bone dice onto a wooden table. The rattle and clatter were sounds of potential fortune or ruin. A single lucky throw could win a man enough to pay for his entire journey, while a bad one could leave him without the coins he needed for the next day's food. This high-stakes tension frequently boiled over. Arguments over a disputed role could erupt into shouting matches or even shoving, forcing the innkeeper to step in and break up the fight before it damaged his furniture or scared away other customers. For all its potential for camaraderie, the common room was a place of raw, unchecked emotion, where a traveler's desperation or a soldier's boredom could turn a friendly game into a dangerous confrontation in the blink of an eye. That common room, buzzing with stories and dice games, was also a place of serious business. For the traveling merchant, his journey was one long, mobile storefront, and the Roman inn was his most vital marketplace. After securing his cart in the courtyard, his work was just beginning. The entire establishment, from the dusty central yard to the smoky common hall, could transform into a bustling, temporary bazaar. With no dedicated shops or safe storage, he had to make his sales right there, among the other travelers, and even the local villagers who might stop by the well-known inn to see what new treasures had arrived. He would carefully unload his most valuable or interesting goods directly from his cart, setting up a small display on a rough wooden table, or even spreading a cloth on the cleanest patch of ground he could find. In the open air of the courtyard, you might find a merchant from Hispania proudly arranging glossy, red-slipped pottery, his display of sturdy bowls and elegant oil lamps drawing the eye of anyone passing through. Inside, away from the elements, another trader would be unfurling bolts of fine linen from Egypt or colorful woolen cloth from Gaul, letting potential customers feel the texture between their fingers. The air itself told the story of distant lands, carrying the sharp scent of eastern spices, the earthy smell of leather goods, and the faint, sweet aroma of exotic resins. This was commerce in its most direct form, a face-to-face exchange that connected the farthest provinces of the empire in a single, noisy room. Every sale was a negotiation, a haggling session conducted over a cup of wine, where the trust you built in that single evening was the only guarantee you had. The innkeeper, of course, took a cut of the action, either charging a small fee for the use of the space or expecting a generous discount on the goods themselves. For a merchant, paying this unofficial tax was simply the cost of accessing a captive audience of potential buyers, all with coins in their purses and a desire for something new. His success or failure on the road could hinge entirely on the deals he struck before the lamps were extinguished for the night. For the merchant who had just sold a valuable bolt of cloth, or the government clerk carrying tax revenues, the shared cella was an unacceptable risk. Their coins bought them an escape from the dormitory, a premium service that fundamentally changed the travel experience. A private room in a superior taberna diversoria was not a mere luxury, it was a fortress of solitude in a world of constant noise and suspicion. The defining feature was the door itself, a solid wooden barrier fitted with a heavy iron lock and key. The moment you slid the bolt across, you severed the chaotic world of the common room from your own temporary sanctuary. Inside, the space was still simple by modern standards, but the differences were profound. Instead of a straw mattress on a rope-webbed frame, you might find a proper wooden bed with a mattress stuffed with wool or even feathers, a world away from the itchy, pest-ridden bedding of the common quarters. The room would often include a sturdy wooden chest for securing your belongings, a private washing basin with a jug of fresh water, and sometimes even a small, dedicated brazier for warmth, freeing you from the crowded huddle around the main hearth. This level of privacy and security came at a steep price, often 5 or even 10 times the cost of a standard bed. It was a fee only the wealthy merchant, the successful lawyer, or the mid-level government official could comfortably afford. For them, the extra cost was not an indulgence but a necessary investment in their safety, their rest, and their peace of mind. They paid for the privilege of silence, for the ability to unclench their fists and finally, truly sleep. That heavy iron key was more than just a promise of privacy. It was a symbol of status that separated a traveler from the common crowd. For those who could not afford such a luxury, a different kind of class distinction was available for a handful of small coins. Within the bustling courtyard of a larger inn, a traveler could hire the services of a servant or a slave. These individuals were the human machinery that kept the establishment running, and their labor was a commodity for sale. After days on the dusty road, your tunic would be stiff with sweat and grime. For a fee, you could hand it over to be beaten clean, scrubbed in a tub with water and ashes, and hung to dry overnight. A servant would appear to carry your heavy luggage from your cart to your cella, saving your weary back from the strain. Even the care of your horse, a task you might have done yourself, could be delegated. A groom would take your coin and set to work with a comb and a bucket, ensuring your animal was properly tended so you could focus on securing your own meal and lodging. This was convenience, but it was also a performance of social standing. The moment you paid someone else to perform a menial task, You were enacting the same social hierarchy that defined the Roman world. The merchant who hired a porter was, in that small moment, playing the part of the wealthy patrician, demonstrating that his time and comfort were more valuable than the few coins he spent. The soldier who paid to have his cloak cleaned was separating himself from the common legionary who had to do everything for himself. This entire system was a mirror of Roman society, compressed into the microcosm of the inn. Everyone, from the slave who owned nothing to the wealthy equestrian traveling on state business, understood their place in this unspoken order. The road may have been a great leveler in terms of shared discomfort, but the services you could buy constantly reminded you and everyone else exactly where you stood. And for the vast majority of travelers who could not afford to hire help, their journey was defined by a single, relentless reality: the necessity of doing everything themselves. For the traveler with coins to spare, the ultimate comfort was not found in a locked room, but in the promise of hot water and steam. After days of dust and grime caked onto your skin, the chance to bathe was a transformative luxury, a brief return to civilized life. An upscale taberna diversoria, particularly those situated near a bustling town, or even better, a famous spa town like Baiae, could offer this precious amenity. This was not a private bathroom, of course, but an incredible convenience nonetheless. The inn might have its own small, private bathhouse in a separate building within its compound, reserved solely for its paying guests. More commonly, the innkeeper had an arrangement with the proprietor of the nearby public bath, allowing his guests entry for a discounted fee. For a traveler, this was the pinnacle of road trip comfort, a service that separated a merely adequate journey from a memorable one. You would leave the inn and make your way to the bath complex, a low, sprawling building from which plumes of steam gently escaped. The experience inside followed a familiar, soothing ritual. You would begin in the apoditerium, the changing room, where you entrusted your travel-worn clothes to an attendant, receiving a numbered token in return. Then, the journey through heat and water began. First, the tepidarium, a warm room that prepared your body for the higher temperatures to come. Here, you would start to sweat, the grime of the road beginning to loosen. Next was the caldarium, the hot room. The air was thick with steam, heated by a furnace roaring beneath the raised floor. You would pour warm water over yourself from a small basin, scrubbing your skin with a strigil, a curved metal tool that scraped away the oils, sweat, and dirt. Finally, you would plunge into the frigidarium, the cold pool, a shocking, invigorating rush that closed your pores and left you feeling truly clean and revitalized. This was more than just getting clean. It was a profound psychological reset. The weight of the journey seemed to wash away with the dirt. The tension in your muscles, knotted from hours in the saddle or on a hard cart bench, melted in the humid heat. In the calm of the bathhouse, surrounded by other travelers and locals, you could almost forget you were on a difficult journey. You were simply a Roman citizen enjoying one of the great pillars of your culture, the social and restorative ritual of the bath. For a few precious hours, the insecurity of the road was replaced by the ordered, predictable comfort of Roman engineering and society. It was a reminder of home, no matter how far from it you were, and a taste of the civilized world you were hoping to reach at your journey's end. But even this luxury had its limits, for the water in that welcoming pool was not changed as often as you might hope. The promise of a locked room meant nothing if the inn itself was a trap. Security was a constant low hum of anxiety for every traveler, a problem the innkeepers themselves had to address, however crudely. The first line of defense was the building itself. The main entrance to a decent taberna diversoria was not a welcoming door. but a heavy, reinforced gate, often studded with iron and secured with a thick wooden crossbar that slid into brackets on the inside. Once that bar was in place after sunset, no one was getting in or out without waking the entire household. The windows facing the street were not for letting in a breeze. They were narrow, high openings, often fitted with iron bars to prevent anyone from squeezing through. This was not a home. It was a fortress designed to keep the dangers of the outside world at bay. Yet the real security lay not in the wood and iron, but in the people. A vigilant innkeeper was your greatest asset. He often lived on the premises with his entire family, his wife, his children, and perhaps a few trusted slaves. This created a small community within the walls, a network of eyes and ears that noticed any unusual activity. In larger establishments, the innkeeper might even hire a night watchman, an ex-soldier or a burly local, to patrol the courtyard and corridors through the night, his footsteps a deliberate, reassuring sound in the darkness. You were paying not just for a bed, but for the protection of this makeshift family. Their reputation and their livelihood depended on providing a safe, or at least a safer, night's sleep. But this very reputation was a fragile thing, easily shattered by the clientele the inn attracted. For every honest merchant seeking rest, there were others who saw the transient population of an inn as the perfect hunting ground. These places were notorious haunts for petty thieves, con artists, and prostitutes, all mingling freely in the common room. A friendly stranger offering you a cup of wine might be distracting you while his partner slips a hand into your coin purse. The woman smiling from a shadowed corner was not just a fellow traveler, but a professional looking for a client, her presence a clear signal of the establishment's loose morals. The innkeeper often tolerated these characters, as they spent money and brought in business, creating a delicate balance between maintaining order and maximizing profit. This meant you could never truly let your guard down. The very people sharing your fire, your meal, and your laughter could be assessing your wealth, your vulnerability, and your route for the next day. Your security, in the end, was a personal responsibility, a performance of vigilance you had to maintain from the moment you stepped through the gate until the moment you left it behind in the morning light. Every sound in the night, every stranger's glance, all came back to the man who held the keys. The Roman innkeeper was the absolute monarch of his small, dusty domain, a figure of immense power over your temporary existence. He was often a freedman, a former slave who had scraped together enough money to buy his own establishment, and he understood the value of freedom and the weight of coin better than anyone. His past meant he was shrewd, resilient, and utterly pragmatic, with a deep understanding of the social hierarchies he now manipulated. To you, the weary traveler, he was a triad of roles: provider, protector, and potential predator, all rolled into one. His reputation preceded him, immortalized not in official histories, but in the comedies and legal complaints of the era. Roman playwrights like Plautus filled their scenes with cunning copons, characters universally known for their greed and trickery. The most common grievance was the bill, an ever-mutable document that seemed to grow longer with every hour you spent under his roof. That cup of wine you shared with a new acquaintance, the lamp oil that burned out while you wrote a letter, the extra bundle of hay for your mule. Every single service was meticulously recorded and inflated. You had to negotiate the price of a bed before you slept in it, for to inquire after the fact was to invite a staggering sum you had no choice but to pay. And the wine itself was a classic point of deception. The practice of watering down wine was an open secret, but a dishonest innkeeper did not stop at mere dilution. He might secretly add other, cheaper liquids, or even dangerous sweeteners to mask the vinegar tang of a spoiled batch, prioritizing profit over the health of his transient customers. But the most chilling aspect of his power was his connection to the shadow world just outside his gate. Legal texts and satires alike warn of the innkeeper who was in league with local bandits. A man of wealth, traveling with a heavy purse, might find that the innkeeper had quietly passed word of his route and his valuables to a group of waiting thieves. The friendly advice about which road to take could be a deliberate misdirection, leading you straight into an ambush. This was the fundamental tension of your entire stay. You needed this man for your survival, for your food, your warmth, and your safety. Yet you could never be sure if his smile was one of hospitality or calculation, if he was your guardian for the night or the architect of your ruin come morning. Your journey's success hinged on your ability to read his character, a desperate gamble with a man who held all the cards. That innkeeper's calculating gaze swept over a crowd unlike any other in the Roman world. The common room of a taberna diversoria was a remarkable social experiment, a temporary collision of classes and professions that would rarely mix in the orderly streets of a city. Here, the rigid hierarchies of Roman life softened out of sheer necessity. The most common face belonged to the merchant, his tunic dusty from the road, his eyes sharp with calculation as he mentally tallied the contents of his secured cart outside. He shared a bench with a legionary, a soldier on leave or perhaps traveling to a new post, his military bearing a stark contrast to the merchant's weary slump. Their worlds were entirely different, yet for one night, they were equals in their need for a warm meal and a safe place to lay their heads. Sipping from a shared cup of wine, you might find a government courier, a man in a hurry carrying official dispatches in a leather satchel chained to his belt. He was a vital cog in the imperial machine, and his presence commanded a quiet respect, even from the boisterous group of actors in the corner. These performers, their faces still bearing traces of stage paint, were traveling between towns, their laughter loud and their stories even louder. In a quieter nook, a pilgrim on his way to a distant temple might be deep in conversation with a traveling philosopher, the two men debating the nature of the gods, while a local farmer simply tried to enjoy his stew in peace. This was the inn's true magic. It was a microcosm of the entire empire, a cross-section of its people all gathered under one smoky, timbered roof. The wealthy equestrian might retreat to his locked room, but downstairs, the scribe, the sailor, the slave accompanying his master, and the freelance artisan all jostled for space around the same fire. They were bound together not by social rank, but by the shared vulnerabilities of the road, the universal desire for warmth, and the common fear of what lurked in the darkness beyond the inn's protective walls. In this bustling, temporary community, you could hear a dozen different Latin accents, catch snippets of Greek from an Eastern trader, and glimpse the vast, interconnected world of Rome, all without ever leaving your stool. The final price of your night's rest was never a simple, fixed number. It was a tense negotiation that began the moment you stepped through the gate, a subtle battle of wits between your need for shelter and the innkeeper's desire for profit. The cost of a basic bed in a shared cella could range from a single small bronze coin, and as to a handful of them, depending entirely on the establishment's location and its level of comfort, or lack thereof. This was just the entry fee. Every additional service was a separate line on a mental bill the keeper was tallying in his head. A simple meal of pulse, bread, and cheese might cost you another 2 asses. Stabling your horse for the night and providing it with a bundle of hay and a bucket of water could easily double your expenses. Then came the smaller charges, the lamp oil for an hour of light, the warm water for washing, the fee for a servant to carry your bags. A traveler had to be constantly alert, agreeing on a price for each service before receiving it. For to ask after the fact was to invite a figure designed to empty your purse. This system of constant haggling was a direct reflection of the Roman economy itself. There was no standardized pricing across the empire, no regulatory board to protect the consumer. The cost of a bed in a busy port town like Ostia was vastly different from the price at a lonely inn on a mountain pass in Hispania. An innkeeper adjusted his rates based on what he thought you could pay. A well-dressed merchant would be quoted one price, while a dusty foot soldier would be quoted another. Your ability to negotiate was as vital a travel skill as reading a map. You had to argue, feign indignation, and sometimes even threaten to take your business to a rival establishment down the road, all to shave a few coins off the total. And how do you pay this negotiated sum? For most, it was with the clink of bronze and silver. A traveler's purse was a heavy thing, filled with a jumble of coins from different mints and eras, their values shifting from province to province. But in the remote, rural corners of the empire, coin could be scarce. In these areas, the age-old practice of barter remained alive and well. A farmer traveling to market might pay for his night's lodging not with coins, but with a chicken from his cart or a measure of grain. A potter could settle his bill with a few sturdy ceramic bowls, useful additions to the inn's own kitchen. This system required a different kind of negotiation, a debate over the relative value of goods instead of currency. The innkeeper had to decide, was this block of hard cheese worth a meal and a bed? Was the quality of that woolen cloth sufficient to cover a week's stabling? In this way, the inn became a tiny, impromptu marketplace, its economy a fluid mix of imperial currency and ancient tradition. Your entire journey's budget, carefully planned in the city, could dissolve into a messy exchange of goods and promises the farther you got from home. So with the bills settled, by coin or by trade, you faced one final, universal ritual before you could finally rest: the careful preparation for a night spent in a room full of strangers. The fire that warmed your bones was a constant sleeping threat. Those bronze braziers glowing with charcoal were the only source of heat, but they stood on unstable legs on floors covered in dry, dusty rushes. A single ember popping onto the floor could smolder unseen for minutes before a sudden tongue of flame would race up a timber wall. With the main gate barred for the night, the entire population of the inn could be trapped inside a roaring inferno within moments. There were no buckets of sand stationed in the corner, no shouted drills for evacuation. Your safety depended on the frantic, disorganized efforts of terrified men, all fighting to escape through a single, choked exit. And if you made it out alive, you stood in the cold dark, watching everything you owned, your cart, your goods, your livelihood, turn to ash and embers. This was a fear that lived in the back of every traveler's mind as they huddled around the very source of their potential doom. The air you breathed was no less dangerous than the flames. Sanitation was a losing battle in the best Roman inns. That chamber pot in the corner of your cella had to be emptied somewhere, and the designated latrine was often just a deep pit in a far corner of the courtyard, its foul odor a permanent feature of the establishment. Flies buzzed incessantly around this area, then landed on the food being served in the common room. The well, your source of drinking water, was often dug perilously close to this contaminated ground. Every sip of water, every bite of bread, was a gamble with dysentery or a fever that could leave you weak and stranded. An inn was a perfect breeding ground for disease, a place where the ailments of 100 different towns met and mingled, and your body was the unwilling host. But the most immediate danger often came from the people around you. The cheap, potent wine that eased the aches of travel also loosened tempers. A friendly dice game could turn violent in a heartbeat. A disputed wager, a misinterpreted glance, or a simple insult could send two drunken soldiers reaching for their belt knives, turning the common room into a chaotic brawl. Furniture would splinter, ceramic cups would shatter, and in the flickering lamplight, it was impossible to tell friend from foe. And sometimes the violence was not a spontaneous outburst, but a cold, calculated enterprise. A group of men traveling together might not be merchants at all, but a band of robbers who had booked the cella next to yours. While you slept, a carefully placed blade could slip between the door's wooden planks, quietly lifting the inside latch. The door would swing open without a sound, and your last sight might be the shadowy figures of the men you had shared wine with hours before. To survive a night in a Roman inn, you needed more than just coin. You needed a traveler's toughness, a street-smart wariness that never fully slept, and the grim acceptance that comfort and danger were two sides of the same worn coin. That shared vulnerability around the fire connects us directly to our ancient counterparts, yet the chasm between their experience and a modern hotel stay is almost unimaginable. Think of the Roman inn's central courtyard, that secure space for your cart and mule. Today, that function is fulfilled by valet parking, a service that removes the animal entirely from the equation, replacing the worry of hay and water with the simple handoff of a key fob. The Roman traveler's first priority was securing his livelihood, his literal horsepower, while our first interaction is often with a uniformed attendant who whisks our vehicle away to a hidden, climate-controlled garage. The common room, that smoky, bustling hub of news and dice games, has its parallel in the modern hotel lobby, but the similarities are only superficial. Both are social spaces, yet the Roman common room was a necessity, the only source of heat, light, and cooked food. Our lobbies are often places of optional leisure, with overpriced coffee and comfortable chairs, a space you can choose to ignore entirely on your way to a private elevator. The most profound difference lies in the figure of authority. The Roman innkeeper was a jack of all trades, part stable manager, part chef, part information broker, and potential threat. His modern equivalent, the front desk manager, operates within a rigid corporate framework of standardized service and brand policies. Your negotiation with the innkeeper was a personal, high-stakes haggle over every service, a dance of distrust. Your interaction with the front desk is a transaction, often prepaid and receipted, governed by a credit card and the threat of a negative online review. The innkeeper's power was personal and absolute. The manager's power is constrained by a system designed for consistency. This is the true divide. The entire Roman travel experience was defined by personal negotiation and uncertainty, from the quality of the straw mattress to the honesty of the wine merchant. Modern hospitality strives to eliminate surprise, offering a predictable, sanitized cocoon of comfort, where the greatest risk is a slow Wi-Fi connection, not a bandit's knife in the dark. The journey has been streamlined, but in the process, have we lost the raw human connection, for better and for worse, that once defined a night on the road? So the next time you check into a modern hotel, spare a thought for the Roman travelers who made your journey possible. Every secure parking garage has its roots in a dusty, guarded courtyard for carts and mules. Every hotel lobby echoes the noisy, smoky common room where news and goods were traded. The entire concept of a roadside stop, a place to rest and recharge far from home, was perfected not by a modern corporation, but by the gritty, pragmatic world of the Roman inn. From the hard, pest-ridden bed to the watered-down wine, these places were not about luxury. They were about survival and connection, the vital threads that held a vast empire together. They were the original social network, the first rest stops, and the prototype for every motel that lines our highways today. What single aspect of this ancient system would you have found most appealing? Would it be the chance to hear news from across the empire in a bustling common room, or the terrifying gamble of trusting the innkeeper pouring your drink? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and if you enjoyed this journey into the past, subscribe for more explorations into the hidden corners of history.